Good evening, everyone. We'll call the special city council meeting to order for the 5th of January, 2023. I'd like to ask if there are any citizens to speak to items that are not on the agenda. You're welcome to come up. Please state your name, and we respectfully ask you to keep your comments to 3 minutes.
Good evening. My name is Jennifer Haithcock. So I'm here to speak on behalf of the homeless and the limited income and the housing problem. Not really sure what I'm able to ask as a citizen, but like I know that I've actually been a citizen of Clearwater for almost a year and a half now. So I'm kind of curious to know what your role, responsibility, and authority is on things that could help ease the homeless. So Clearwater has an ordinance where you're not allowed to sleep on the beach, you're not allowed to sleep in your car, even in a public parking lot. Hold on a second, let me get to where I'm at. So, I mean, if an ordinance can be made and citizens can speak up for that, rent is really, really high. Like, I'm on disability, so I'm going to try to wing it and go buy my thing and try to keep it. So, wanted to know if rent could have a cap, if, like, local authority has that authority to do that, especially for people in limited income. And then also, too, trying to find to be able to get into an apartment, your income has to be at least 3.5 to 4 times the rent. That's, so for that, at 4 times, that's $3,600. I'm on disability, so I do Uber Eats on the side. I'm also trying to build a business as a personal, caregiver, Jennifer of all trades. And, even if I could find an apartment that would be $900, I still wouldn't qualify because of my income, because with my disability and the Uber that I'm allowed to do, there's a cap I can do on that. I'm still under even at the 3.5, which is $3,150. So does local government have that ability to, like in the Clearwater area say, hey, apartments, you know what I'm saying? Like, is that...
I'm going to let you finish, and then we'll give you some comments.
Okay, so I would actually like to finish off my little 40 minutes with Kathleen. I just want to thank you for your guts and your compassion. For the homeless. You give me hope in government. Together we will do great things. And, when I do my Uber, I get to ride around and I get to go to fancy places and stuff that I will never, ever be able to afford. But something's wrong with our society when I drive by a mansion on Gulf Boulevard. And, I always seen him. He's always had 3 in the driveway, 3 Corvettes. Who doesn't want a Corvette, right? But then I drive by one time and his garage was open and there was 4. And we have our vets.
Okay.
That are, homeless and on the street, so, But yeah, okay, go ahead.
Well, no, I mean, Councilmember Beckman works on a lot of the homeless issues. I mean, there are limitations to what we can do with rents.
Right.
We can, I need you to sit because we
Okay.
can't have a dialogue. I understand. But we're working on some additional affordable housing projects. They're limited. The resources that we have, but there are private property rights and people have the right to set rents, and people can either rent or not rent from those places. There are affordable housing, and I think going for Section 8 vouchers and other avenues are something that you need to pursue.
All right.
I mean, Vice Mayor, do you want to speak to some of the other? And I think it would be easier to come in and have a one-on-one with one of us.
Right, which I still would like that with you.
Okay.
I think the biggest challenge is that there's, years-long waits for Section 8 housing. And so you bring up a good point about having Social Security disability and limits on the income that you can earn, and then where you're supposed to live. And does that mean that people who are on Social Security disability don't live in our community? they need to go somewhere else, or what can we do? And we do have limits, but it's not that we don't work hard to find solutions. And to hear people's authentic voice is part of the path to find solutions. So I thank you for speaking your truth of experience.
I'm sorry, I can't.
I just want to throw in mental health.
Thanks. Anyone else for citizens to be heard?
Good evening. My name is Jean Johnston, and I have volunteered as a patient escort at Bread and Roses Women's Health and Wellness Center for the past 5 years. Bread and Roses is a comprehensive reproductive health center on Highland Avenue. It offers a variety of critical health services, including birth control, well women's checks, cancer screening, and abortion care. For years, angry protesters have gathered in front of Bread and Roses along Highland Avenue trying to harass people to not come into the center. These include angry, shouting men and women who often bring their children. Though exasperated by these regulars, we escorts are more fearful of the men that have been coming since summer. These extremists, we understand, are being paid to be there to publicly shame patients. Patients who arrive at the clinic run the gauntlet. Extremists try to divert them in any way just short of physical assault. We escorts try to be grounding and comforting to the patients, walking with them, speaking calmly, and moving them steadily into the safety of the building. Most patients are extremely scared of these screaming bullies or baffled, and some are very, very angry. Extremists stop cars trying to turn into the Bread and Roses driveway, screaming through windows and shoving material into any open car window. They will do anything to slow down and stop the cars. Once a car makes it into the parking lot, the extremists can no longer physically approach a driver or a passenger without trespassing, but they scream horrible things as loudly as they can at them. Actually, the extremists shout at anyone in the vicinity. People trying to dine at Remy's Cafe across the street, construction workers paving the parking lot in Publix, and a neighborhood man walking his dog. A vet at the animal hospital behind the center tells us that the screaming causes great distress for the animals being cared for in that facility. All the neighboring businesses hate the chaos created by these extremists. The extremists spend a lot of time talking and yelling at the escorts between the patients' arrivals and departures. Most of us never respond in order not to escalate the situation, but this makes us a captive, passive target for their never-ending string of verbal abuse. There have been incidences where these men have become physical with reproductive rights supporters that have been around them, and some are pressing charges. Bread and Roses has had to expend precious funds to hire off-duty Clearwater police officers for on-site security. We as escorts feel this is absolutely necessary, and we would like to see the off-duty officers take a more active role in helping to control the extremists. The situation is a tinderbox ready to be ignited. These extremists pose a significant public safety threat in Clearwater. Indeed, multiple assaults and instances of trespassing have already occurred. The things these extremists shout make it clear that they are violent people who want to punish those who disagree with them. I know that we can all agree that harassment and violence has no place in our healthcare system. Don't take my word for it, though. Please come any Saturday morning and see for yourselves, then consider how much abuse people simply trying to access a healthcare center should be allowed.
Thank you, Ms. Johnston. Yes?
This is a subject that John Jennings was working on.
Yes.
We have things in motion. I just want you to know that there are several of us on the council who are going to make sure that that continues moving forward.
That is such a good thing to hear, and I appreciate the council men and women that we have talked to and have been supportive of it, and Mr. Jennings' support. It's something that's
Thank
needed.
you.
Thank you.
Anyone else for citizens to be heard?
Good afternoon, Mayor, council members. My name is Jonathan Wade. I reside at 1312 North Madison Avenue, Clearwater, Florida. Just came tonight to speak in behalf of Mr. Jennings, who I know is on the...
Mr. Wade, that would be under the 5.1.
Okay, I'll come
So
back.
that's just citizens to be heard on topics not on the agenda.
Okay, I'll be back.
Okay? Anyone else for topics not on the agenda?
Tail end, Charlie, as usual. Happy New Year, everybody. Norm Bill, Veterans Advocate, and I have selfish reasons for being here tonight. It's a line from The Godfather. All those guys get it. And the first line in The Godfather is, "I believe in America." Well, I want to salute someone from my old neighborhood. We had a different span in time, but we came from the same neighborhood in Whitehaven, and he got promoted last week by President Biden through the NDAA. Ulysses S. Grant is now Ulysses S. Grant, General of the Armies, plural. And he's in good company. There's only two others. George Washington, which they awarded the title during the bicentennial, and Blackjack Pershing from Missouri. And Second Lieutenant Grant went to West Point. He actually didn't do very well, didn't want to be there. His parents couldn't afford it. He was there, and he got enough grades to get by. Very smart in mathematics, so they put him in logistics, and his posting was at Jefferson Barracks. And his roommate said, "Hey, my sister lives over at Whitehaven. With the family there, you ought to hop on your horse and go see her." So he did. After he stopped at the tavern which I was in last week, without a horse, it's still there. And he courted her, and we kind of know most of the story, or it's hard to say the rest of the story, but Whitehaven was ready for the wrecking ball until there was a Senator Frank Bild. He intervened and made a National Historic Site. That site was where they were married. His parents boycotted the marriage because of the slavery issue, and he did have some buddy from West Point called Longstreet. He ended up being the second in command under Robert E. Lee. Well, during the Mexican War, it was kind of a live fire exercise for the big Civil War. He did logistics, he displayed valor, but he also displayed an undisciplined, unkept, and drinking way. And he was rebuked by a Second Lieutenant Robert E. Lee for his undiscipline and his appearance, and just wasn't up with the Army. So bad, he had to resign his commission in lieu of a general court-martial. So he came back to Whitehaven. He failed farming. He failed at selling firewood, bill collecting. His moniker was Useless Grant. Until 1861, he got recalled. 4 years later, he commanded the Union Army. I think the big thing, if General Grant was here, he would say, "Well, you look, everybody labeled me a failure, everyone, except myself." And he believed in himself, and he believed in America. But the big thing is he never gave up. And so if he came here, he'd say, "Who cares about these stars? What I care about is Americans, especially our youth. If you fail, don't start a massacre on anything, or learn from your
Thank you,
failures."
Mr. Bill.
That's okay, and I believe in America.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else?
I have one comment.
Yes, Ms. Call.
A comment was submitted by Daniel Haluba. Ms. Beckman, she, her, and WTF. I do appreciate your return message. I find expressing your gender preference odd, to say the least. I guess it is your liberal, elitist, snob world. Some subset of your constituents has difficulty determining what sex you identify with. In a new world where not of that is supposed to matter, why add that? Are you sure everyone sees you as Caucasian? Maybe you should add that to your title as well. How about publishing your financial net worth? How about adding the value of your residence to your identity? Your crusade for the environment, homeless, downtrodden, LGBTQ, or whatever, in your case, is just another avenue to enrich yourself as a politician and personally. You come off as very disingenuous, and that is why you have communication issues. And then you quote Martin Luther King inappropriately. Is there any wonder why you have issues? Your honest feedback, as you describe it to me in your email, does not facilitate legitimate city business and is an epitome of local government overreach. My dear, from my perspective, you are abusing your elected position, which causes many of the challenging circumstances as you describe, due to your lack of focus on city business. No one, including Mr. Jennings or his replacement, will display the ubiquitousness you demand. That is because your demands are incompatible with running a city or only cater to a subset of the citizenry. Terminating Mr. Jennings, good job or bad, will not continue the legend Mr. Bill as Mr. Hibbert desires. Throwing the city into further turmoil by going through another city manager selection process will not advance your agenda or that of the city. Kill the messenger. That will only make you look like a fool. Add that to your title. Kathleen Marie Beckman, fool. I hope certainly not.
All right, any city manager reports? No, sir. Any city attorney reports?
No, sir.
All right, item 5.1.
Discuss the employment status of the city manager, John Jennings.
Does anyone have any statements at this time? Otherwise, I'm going to open it up to the citizens that are here to speak, and then we can have a discussion. Is everyone comfortable with that?
I'm comfortable with statements after.
Yeah. All right, I'm opening it up on item 5.1, and if anyone would like to speak to this item.
Again, good afternoon, Mayor, council members. My name is Jonathan Wade. I reside at 1312 North Madison Avenue, Clearwater, Florida. And I stand today after sending emails. I sent emails to Ms. Textera, Mr. Hibbert, and Ms. Beckman, expressing that I thought that moving to terminate the city manager at this juncture was not in the best interest of the city. And I respect your responses, and I got some feedback from Ms. Beckman that gave me a little bit more insight. But what I can say is that Mr. Jennings has shown genuineness when he's come to North Greenwood, when I've met with him one-on-one, as I was running for council and as I met with the Ministerial Alliance. He seemed to be very favorable of helping in our communities, and I thought that starting the process over with a search and that process would take a bit of time to complete, and then we're starting this process all over again while there are many tasks that are before the community. We're struggling to keep the Martin Luther King Center, as that is an issue that's ongoing, and we need someone that's proactive to all of the city, and Mr. Jennings has shown himself to be that way. So I'm standing in opposition of firing and terminating him at this time, giving him an opportunity to correct whatever wrongs that are done and to move forward from that point. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wade.
Feliz Navidad and Prospero Año. My name is Eliseo Santana. I'm a long-time resident of the city of Clearwater. And I just want to say that I'm looking at each of you that are going to be making these decisions, and I have a lot of concerns. When the city manager was hired, I had a lot of expectations, much hope, and the reality is that over the last year, I have really, because of COVID and other situations, I have not really had any interactions, any true interactions. So I don't have any personal type of a feedback, just that I had that expectation. I do have some concerns that if the termination does occur, that we may have some issues in bringing in some additional good talent to be able to run the city, because they should be rightfully concerned. I just have to say that trust is a huge thing, and if you do not have trust in any of your employees, they should not be here. I have trust in each of you that you're going to do the right thing, the right decision for the city. I'm not in favor, I'm not against it, I'm an observer, I'm watching, and I'm very concerned, but I trust that you will make the right decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Santana. Anyone else?
Oh, sorry, man. No, go ahead. Hello, my name's Andrew. I represent the Plaza Park neighborhood, which is just down the road there.
Can you give your last name, Andrew?
Oh, Andrew Gerd, G-I-R-D. We feel since our association has been around, there's been a marked difference between communication with the city and our neighborhood association. We feel a lot of that is down to Mr. Jennings' implementation of that neighborhood association division within the city. I'm not sure of its exact name. We see him as a leader, we see him as competent, and we feel it will be a huge mistake to terminate him at this stage. If there are communication issues between him and yourselves, those can be addressed. You know, work with him. He's a competent person. I don't think a government the size of Clearwater should be letting go competent people. I really don't. They're few and far between, in my opinion. So please don't make this mistake. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kerr.
Good evening. My name is Karina Morrison. I've lived at 409 North Highland Avenue for over 20 years, and I am a second-generation native of Pinellas County. I have been impressed with Mr. Jennings over this past year. He our neighborhood is Glenwood Estates, and we've had quite a bit of happenings in our neighborhood, and it's all because of Mr. Jennings redesigning the department so that it's more accessible to our neighborhoods. And I'm really impressed with his work ethic, that he worked through going through COVID and still got his job done. While I can understand that maybe some of you are frustrated with the communication that you're having with him, I'm actually right now going to St. Petersburg College to be a teacher. And what I do is I tell my students that it's very important to have communication, and I want all of you to be examples to those students and give Mr. Jennings more of an opportunity because he's only had 1 year. I also think it's financially irresponsible to fire him, and then we have to go all through the process of having to find another city manager. And what if you don't like him? So I'm against firing Mr. Jennings, and I hope you guys do the right thing. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor Hibbert, the council member. My name is Mark Birnbaum. I've been here before. There are many failed promises that the city manager, Mr. Jennings, has done over the vast year that I've been involved with. I've been involved in a project known as the Nursery Road Project with the charter school. He has failed and he's deceived the citizens of the city of Clearwater by tokenly appear to be interested in trying to solve the problem. But documents prove otherwise. The documents of the plat notices and the DRCs failed to be properly executed in the right legal manner according to municipal code. So, due to his lack of leadership, lack of abilities, lack of responsibilities, and lack of taking charge and being involved in duties as the city manager, I am against retaining him. The fit is just not there. Thank you very much.
Anyone else? I'm going to close public comment if there's no one else. Come on up.
I wasn't sure of the protocol here. I handed a thing, wasn't sure if I. So, Mayor, Council, folks, thank you for this opportunity. God bless America. I want to start off by saying that. My name is Gwen Smith, and I've lived at 308 North Madison for 35 years, so it's been a great place to be. Before I even start on my comments, we had a 100th year anniversary recently, and Mr. Jennings, along with our fire chief and police chief, came, and it was a wonderful event. We were particularly pleased with his comments and the plans that he had for our community, so we're very excited about that. I'm here because of the concern that I heard about the firing of our city manager. Mr. Jennings was hired as a result of a search paid for by the city, and he was hired and has been employed for a year. The previous city manager, Bill Horn, God bless his soul, was city manager for, 20 years? Is that right? I'm thinking that. And this is the second term for Mr. Hibbert, and we're just very grateful for your leadership, Mr. Hibbert. And you stated that you're not going to be seeking re-election, which will be a sad thing for our city. I'm concerned as a citizen of the city, what is the need for such a hasty decision? What it appears to me a hasty decision. Word has it that Mr. Jennings had a positive evaluation at his 6-month eval. Though very experienced personnel is, I'm sorry, have a hard time reading my writing. Two very experienced personnel, Mr. Horn and Mr. Hibbard, and then a new hire. We know that, again, the experience Mr. Horn brought to his city manager position bode well for us as a community. But to me, as a former Pinellas County School Board employee, you teach and then you evaluate. And my question was there any communication regarding the issues? I'm not real clear on that. I did not hear that, oh, well, we worked with them, we have a homing protocol. Things are different in New York, as we all know. My question was, how much did that happen with Mr. Jennings? So anyway, that's the concern I had. It's not in my view, the failure is not with Mr. Jennings. It's actually with I don't want to go there, Mr. Hibbard, because I do have great respect for you. But my question is how much teaching was actually going on, or just communication? No one is psychic. Was Mr. Jennings expected to read minds of time-honored protocols in dealing with these issues? And if it was it shared with him? My opinion, and it's only my opinion, is that this is a hasty decision, a hasty firing. And what really is the real issue? This seems like an extreme decision based on what, again, from what we know, is there more to this situation that we don't know? Anyway, thank you so much for this opportunity. I, again, wanting to be retained.
Anyone else? Want a last chance? Okay. Ms. Call's got several emails.
A comment was submitted by Joanna Kleckner for the meeting tonight, and as a resident of Clearwater, unfortunately I will not be able to attend, but I would like to make it known that I prefer keeping the existing city manager. From the Rickers, it has come to my attention by a fellow neighbor that the first steps have been taken in firing John Jennings. My family and I would like to express our appreciation for what he has done for the neighborhood. We would like to continue the growth and hate to see him being fired when he has helped our community. A comment was submitted by Jill Tucker Waybright. I have been a resident of Clearwater for over a decade. I have attended many neighborhood outings and love my neighborhood. I want to let you know John Jennings got all of our sidewalks fixed and did a good job. I would like to have him continue to be our city manager. I look forward to more work being done with our neighborhoods and more improvements in our city of Clearwater. Comment was submitted by Lou Stempfer. I have been a resident of Clearwater for over a decade. I have attended many neighborhood outings and love my neighborhood. I want to let you know John Jennings got all of our sidewalks fixed and did a good job. I would love to have him continue to be our city manager. I look forward to more work being done with our neighborhood and more improvements in our city of Clearwater. Thank you for fixing our sidewalks. A comment was submitted by Sarah Gaithier. My name is Sarah Gaithier, and I am a mother and a community member who resides in Clearwater. I have been very impressed with the accomplishments of Mr. Jennings over the last year as city manager. Mr. Jennings has been instrumental in improving our neighborhoods. One of the driving factors in our family moving to Clearwater was a strong community and having a place that my son felt supported and safe. Mr. Jennings has increased the hours and accessibility of the North Greenwood Library, where my son has taken classes. I homeschool my son, and having resources for him through the Clearwater Library has made all the difference. He has addressed issues with the sidewalks so that we can enjoy time outside as a family riding bikes or walking, and has created a neighborhoods division with additional staff so that we have more resources. In the last year, Mr. Jennings has been instrumental in the betterment of our city, and I sincerely hope that he is given the chance to continue his work in improving our neighborhoods. I urge you to vote no on terminating his employment status as city manager. Comment was submitted by Robert King. Dear City Councilors, below is the content of a letter I published. In my letter, I avoided any mention of the Clearwater City Council or its impending decision on John Jennings. Whenever we disagree, isn't there always a path open that leads back to mutual agreement, to reconciliation, and ultimately, shouldn't we judge a person by the content of his character? In a letter below, I believe John Jennings did not override the City of Portland's Public Works decision. He asked his assistant, Gina Tapp, to work with Public Works for a mutual solution, and the result was an agreement that allowed me to receive the medical treatment that saved my life and return to my job upon recovery. The letter. When John Jennings was manager of the city of Portland, Maine, he made a decision that demonstrated his selflessness and compassion. I had been out of work for an extended period with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. After 2 failed regimens of chemotherapy, oncologist John Winters III wanted me to enter a clinical trial at Dana-Farber Cancer Institute, Boston, with Dr. Austin Kim. This required temporary residency at Brigham and Women's Hospital, 2 hours south of my main home, and paid for 100% by the Kite Pharma. Dr. Winter said it was my only chance. I decided to go, but Portland Public Works Administration felt I had been out long enough, and I was denied further leave. In response, Nick Gambipruzzi said, "We're going to see John Jennings." At the meeting, Nick made the intro, and I read my appeal, less than 1 page in length. Then Mr. Jennings turned in his office chair, painted to the closest picture behind him, and said, "This is my best friend. He died at Dana-Farber Cancer Institute. I'll see what I can do." In the following week, management worked together to reach a non-precedent setting agreement. I was allowed to complete the CAR T-cell clinical trial, and I returned to my job after recovery. Today, I am routinely checked every 6 months, once a year, at New England Cancer. We believe my cancer is cured, not in remission. Without CAR T-cell therapy, I would have died in December 2008. Instead, I got to continue photographing and writing about nature. A comment was submitted by Ralph Rugo. I am a downtown Clearwater resident for the past 25 years and pay $40,000 a year in property taxes alone. I felt Mr. Jennings done more in his short tenure than most have done before him in the entire time they held their position. It is unjust that he has to come down to a vote to keep good people doing their job. It is my opinion that some of the present officials are using their position for personal gain versus the good of our city. I vote for Mr. Jennings to remain in his job. Robin Wren. I'm currently in Tennessee caring for my aging in-laws and cannot attend this council meeting. It's very disturbing during these times of global and national upheaval that we cannot even have peace, decency, courtesy, and common sense in our small piece of the planet. The city council, with the exception of Mark Bunker, is doing everything they can to appear to be nothing more than a group of power-mad bullies determined to have their way, admitting to residents in writing that it's our decision to make, regardless of and contrary to the opinions and suggestions of residents. I thought we lived in representative democracy at this local level, where city council members were to listen to the concerns of the constituents and make decisions accordingly. When residents spoke up about health concerns of Jennings, we were ignored because he had experience, and he will be a strong manager and speak up. Well, now that he's a strong city manager and speaking up for residents, suddenly the health concerns are a problem now? How convenient. Maybe Jennings is too strong and too concerned about serving the residents of Clearwater and not compliant enough for his runaway city council. Maybe that's what's really happening. It sure appears that way. He is the same health he has when he was hired, so what's really going on here? This vote to terminate Jennings also gives the impression that because residents wouldn't agree to a strong mayor, we're being pushed by a city council who is ousting the city manager so that they are unable to act as strong mayors. You are giving that impression. Furthermore, this vote to terminate him will likely be at tremendous expense. Severance. I frankly hope he sues for ageism because this is shameful. A new search firm, a tremendous expense, a new contract with hiring bonus, moving expenses, etc. Applicants will likely have us over the barrel because they will see what has happened here. Smart candidates will not apply. What a disaster. Jennings, if they vote you out, I hope you sue the city into oblivion. You have done nothing to violate your contract that have been made aware of. A dark day in the history of Clearwater. We were once a nice beach community, a nice town with community values. Very sad. We're becoming a laughingstock as residents fail to vote and speak up. Comment by Michael Lance. Working with a small business that is trying to expand, we have run into issues slamming in from the revolving door of city managers. Looking into the background, I can see no reason to fire John Jennings. If he makes suggestions you don't agree with, vote against him. Just don't keep searching for more managers until you find one. Always stick with a manager who can do the job. Dennis McDermott. When I watched this Clearwater City Council meeting on December 15, 2022 on YouTube, my reaction was quite similar to what David Albritton so eloquently stated. I truly was disappointed by the action of Mayor Hibbert to recommend termination of Jennings as city manager. Clearly, my comments are limited to public observations. However, my observations do include observing a long history of poor management practices in the city which Jennings inherited, leaving him to manage and resolve a legacy of mediocre, poor, and/or horrible decisions from prior years. I believe Jennings was selected because of his knowledge and experience and his reputation as an agent of change. A true agent of change shares a great deal in common with a high-wire artist. He must be a very daring and unconventional individual with entrepreneurial politician, a high-wire performer without a safety net, a man who thinks stop signs are for other people. By its nature, an effective agent of change must embrace the notion that breaking a few eggs is necessary to make the omelet. Further, history tells us that those who have effectively challenged the status quo have been self-confident, decisive, willful, and confrontational. While these are useful attributes to encourage disruptive thought and action, they can also be perceived as contentious and belligerent, leading to potentially adversarial relationships. Moving fast and breaking things requires the support of an engaged team who are informed, united, and on the similar glide path. Most critical, a board of directors, i.e. City Council, which is willing and able to stay the course, to keep focus on the long term while avoiding arbitrary personal and emotional conflicts. The very reason John Jennings was chosen as our new city manager in 2021 seemed to now form the justification Mayor Hibbert and two others are leaning on to dismiss him after just 1 year of service. I believe Jennings' accomplishment over the course of this 1 year was amazing and certainly on target toward fixing 20-plus years of laissez-faire leadership in Clearwater. Further, I am concerned that the current message being sent from the mayor and the city council includes A, we are micromanagers, B, we don't communicate well, C, our rules of engagement are subject to change on a whim, D, it's our way or the highway, and E, following the termination of John Jennings, we understand that our actions will help ensure that no competent candidates will apply for future city manager position. The Urban Land Institute study report from 2014 helps to paint a clear picture toward a positive way forward for the city of Clearwater. The critical issue continues to be achieving a symbolic relationship between the city and the flag organization. Jennings made some decent progress on that front. I will guess that those who represent the interests of the flag organization will be delighted by a change of leadership at City Hall. Meanwhile, we must hope cooler heads will prevail at the special council meeting on January 5, paving a path forward, a truce between the City Council and Mr. Jennings leading toward keeping the city of Clearwater on solid trajectory toward social, racial, religious, and economic independence. A comment was submitted by Kathy Flaherty. In my opinion, Mr. Jennings serving as the city manager has not benefited the CRA area where I live. In fact, he has diminished my blighted community by taking away planned improvements. He approved plans to have the Mercado space as Hispanic Civic Core as intended for 10-plus years changed to the Festival Core, a gathering space as seen by at the July CRA meeting and by the August 30 project presentation. Then at the September City Council meeting, he stated that he never took any official action to change the name or purpose of the Mercado after being asked by the mayor. Basically, he lied to the council and the Hispanic community. He also stated the longtime planned CRA Stevenson Creek project was canceled by lack of interest. My community is very interested and has been waiting for years for this project to be done. It is scheduled in the downtown development plan to be done this year. This project needs to be completed, not canceled. Also, he has done nothing to address the multitude of dumpsters on city easements and sit directly or next to stormwater drains leading to Stevenson's Creek. I had hoped he would improve my community, but he has not helped mitigate blight in my community or support my community. My community needs support and improvement, not marginalization and abandonment. Last comment. Valentina Quinn. Dear City Council, I am opposed to the motion of Mr. Jennings being fired. He has helped the neighborhoods. He has fixed the sidewalks, making them more safe and more presentable. It sounds like a small thing, but this actually makes the city safer for pedestrians and makes the city less liable to lawsuits. I feel that he has accomplished many things in a short amount of time. Besides that, looking for someone new will take time and more taxpayers' money. I think it will destabilize the city. I think he should be given a chance to continue. I don't believe firing him is a solution.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Gall. I'm going to go ahead and start. First of all, we've gotten a lot of letters and phone calls and other things from a lot of citizens, and I've talked to many. and tried to communicate. This is not an easy process, and Ms. Smith, I'd say I have to be reflective and believe that some of the failure is my own. I can only speak for myself. So I consider this somewhat of a failure on my part as well. But I also have been in management for many years. And I believe when you identify a problem and you do not believe that somebody is a good fit, it is best to identify that and move on. And that's how I feel about this situation. And it is not without cause. First of all, I like Mr. Jennings as a person. And it is not as though he has been here now for 13 months and done nothing. There are some very good things that he has done. And those are things that I hope will be carried on by the next city manager, and I think all of this council supports it. Understand that most of the things that get done because they are approved at the budgetary level. Many of us ran on the fact that we want to improve neighborhood relations. During the Great Recessions, the Neighborhood Services Department was gutted because it was not as essential as police and fire and many of the other services that we have in the city. It needed to be reconstituted, and it has, and it's going to continue to be, and that's a great thing. We've certainly had a terrible time with sidewalks, and that's been something that needed to be addressed for a very long time. It's getting done, and Mr. Jennings did a great job of cutting through red tape and getting that done. So I don't want anyone to think that this is because Mr. Jennings hasn't done good things. There's been some great things that we've accomplished. The referendum, Imagine Clearwater continues on a great path. So I just want people to know that. On a personal level, I was thinking of Mr. Bild talking about The Godfather, and you know, this isn't personal. This is business. And frankly, it's incredibly inconvenient in many ways. I mean, I don't really want to spend 6 of the last 14 months of my term, and I have announced I'm not running again, and people don't believe it, but let me tell you, pull me out a Bible and I'll swear on it. I'm gone, and many people will be thrilled about that. I know. Mr. Holuba included. So, thank you, Mr. Holuba, you're out of order. But, you know, nobody wants to go through this process. Now, some people have said that because, you know, we're terminating potentially a city manager after 13 months that we won't get talent. I don't believe that. We have had incredible stability in this city, much more stability than almost any city in this region has seen for many years. And I think that stability will continue. I really think this is about fit, and I don't think Mr. Jennings is a good fit for the city. I'm going to give a couple examples because one of the things I did not want to do is go into great detail. I hope Mr. Jennings finds a new place of employment and enjoys wherever he is and is satisfied and fulfilled by it. I do not wish him any ill whatsoever. But we have a public process. Somebody in one of the emails that was sent to me said, well, why do you do this in the city council chambers? Because it is the only place we can do it. We can't talk with one another and find out what each other's opinions are. It all has to happen right here on the dais, on TV, for all to see. So people ask sometimes why government isn't efficient or pretty in the way that they do things. It's because it all has to be done up here. You get to see the sausage get made. One of the things that was incredibly important to me when I ran was redoing our strategic plan. It was something that throughout my entire campaign I talked about. It needed to be updated. It was something in all of the interviews with all of the city managers that I made certain that they understood it was a top priority. So we had a misfire on our first strategic planning company, and Mr. Jennings found Dr. Jackson from St. Pete College. We had a session with Dr. Jackson, and right after having that session, come to find out that no one had talked to her, and he's the one who found her. She was only going to be able to do one session and not complete the process. So now we had to go out and find another company to go ahead, and the process got delayed. We have been working on that process literally since the day that the council members that got elected in March of 2020. We've been working on it from day one. Going back to strategic planning, and that original issue started on April 11th, and that is when I started keeping a notebook of issues that I was starting to have problems with. And many of you in this audience know me. I'm not a fainting lily. If I think something's wrong, people know about it. I'm not hiding anything. Trust me, in our meetings together, Mr. Jennings was aware of things that I was not happy with. I also am a believer in one of the concepts of the one-minute manager, which is you praise in public and you criticize in private. So people ask, why haven't we heard about this? If we were criticizing our city manager on a weekly basis because of things that we don't like up on this dais, what can you imagine would happen? Would it undermine confidence in the overall city? Of course it would. So you praise in public, you criticize in private. On May 16th, we had scheduled 4 strategic planning meetings along with the unveiling of our ARPA funding. They were going to be 90-minute meetings at our Morningside Rec Center, our Countryside Rec Center, North Greenwood, and the beach. 45 minutes was going to be devoted to strategic planning, 45 minutes to ARPA funds. At 1:30 on that afternoon, before our first meeting at the Morningside Rec Center, I got a call from our city manager and he said, "You're going to be facilitating the strategic planning discussion tonight, right?" And I said, "I beg your pardon? Nobody's asked me to facilitate that. We've literally got 4.5 hours until we're supposed to be at the rec center and have the conversation." I said, "Why hasn't staff been working on a process that we're going to present to our citizens?" He said, "Well, I thought you were going to do it." I said, "I need to talk to staff," and he said, "Go ahead." And fortunately, our public communications director and I pulled something together along with our staff in a few hours, but it was makeshift. It wasn't what I would want for that type of a process. Also that night, I found out that the ARPA list that we had been altered from what I had originally seen in our one-on-one meetings. That certainly was an issue. On May 19th, July 26th, we finally ratified the amphitheater with Ruth Eckerd Hall, or actually on May 19th. The first meeting did not occur until July 26th. And the final ratification, December 15th. No reason for the agreement taking this long. I do understand that there were times where the manager was involved and then he wasn't involved, would swoop in. And there's some I'm not going to get into. The PSTA depot, certainly there was different types of communication. Different council members had heard different things, but we were going to lose funding potentially. One of the things I was very concerned about was $2.1 million spent on our amphitheater for a house sound system. Now, this is something that everybody who had bid on running the amphitheater said, don't install a sound system, rent it. certainly not 2.1 million. But this was done without council approval. That is beyond any staff member's ability to spend money. I asked him specifically, how was that approved? He couldn't give me an answer. I said, well, I'd like an answer, and why hasn't there been ramifications from this? I want that to settle for a minute. $2.1 million. Some of you are concerned about the money it costs to do a search and a severance. That's not even 10% of the $2.1 million. I still don't have an answer to this day. Mr. Jennings and I did several reviews. We went to lunch and talked about things. I have to tell you, one of the things that concerned me was he didn't agree with some of my assessments. And he said to me that this won't be a one-way conversation. And I said, well, what do you mean by that? He said, I'm going to push back on some of the things that you don't think I'm doing well. And I said, that's certainly your prerogative, but do understand this is not a peer review. These are your 5 bosses. It's not just one of us. We had a new gas director that was supposed to start literally 3 days before that gas director came. He announced that he wasn't going to come because he also owned a company in Jacksonville, and he had gotten a contract with that city. And no one knew that he had a conflict of that magnitude. Another issue was the Ready for 100, which originally there was a presentation given. I asked for more details. The next council meeting, that was added back onto the agenda with no additional information. I called up the city manager, asked him about that, and it was later pulled. None of the rest of the council, and I did not ask for it to be pulled. I said it's going to pass 4-1, because that was the indication here at the work session. And I said, I'm fine with that, but I said, I expect that when any council member asks for additional information, that they're going to get that information. I think they're due that information to make decisions. And I think our decision should be guided. The night after, and this is really when I knew, and some people ask, you know, how can you make this decision? Was it hasty? As Mr. Jennings and I were leaving the building after the night of his review, I told him, I said, John, I have to tell you, I was very close to saying that I think we're just a bad fit and that we ought to move on. And I have to tell you, I was hoping that we could fix things and continue on. And he said, well, if you want me to resign, I'll resign. And we walked out. A month elapsed between that point and when I made the recommendation for termination. Mr. Jennings not once asked me, why were you interested in potentially terminating me? I have to tell you, folks, that's somebody that's not reflecting on how to improve. I can't imagine if one of my bosses through the years had said, you're this close, pal, that I wouldn't have been in their office the next day saying, how can we improve things? What can I do better? And then, since Mr. Jennings and the meeting on the 15th, I sent him an email, and I said, I understand I'm probably the last person that you want to hear from. And I said, I really wish you well. None of this is personal. But I said I would appreciate if you would communicate with your assistant city managers about issues that you were working on solely that they're not up to speed on. We have heard crickets since that time, and that was 3 weeks ago. And so I want you all to know, not only the folks that are here, but also the folks that have written in and other things, that this is not baseless, that this has not been documented, and the communication has not been had, at least for me. I don't know the experience of the rest of the council members because we can't talk. except right here. But I will bet that there have been different messages on the same topics that different people have gotten. And for that, I think, frankly, this isn't an easy decision, but I feel individually that I owe it to the city to make a change. And so my vote is definitely not changing this evening. And I hope you all will respect that. These 5 people have contact with the city manager that no citizen has. There's almost not a day that goes by that I'm not down in the office for a few minutes to sign papers or to talk and discuss issues. I wish Mr. Jennings well, the very best, and I really didn't want to go through a litany of things, but I think you all deserve to find out why. I believe that it's time to move on. Vice Mayor.
Thank you. So first, I want to thank everyone who emailed me, called, or reached out in other ways to learn more about my decision to not renew Mr. Jennings' contract. I do appreciate your sincere concern for our city. I realize that most residents have not been following all of our council meetings throughout the year, and I also realize that most of my interactions with Mr. Jennings are out of the public view. But as the year progressed, I lost complete trust in our city manager. This lack of trust starts with my personal meetings and interactions with him, which frankly totaled hundreds of hours. It reached the point where I realized I was not getting straight or complete answers to critical questions on critical topics and agenda items. This routinely included deflecting responsibility onto others. Mr. Jennings was not the type of the buck stops here leader in his communications with me. When it came to agenda items, often there was missing information and delays. At times, I needed to pursue others for more complete information, and frankly, in a number of instances, truthful and accurate information as well. It is impossible to work effectively on important city business when I do not have strong confidence and complete trust in the city manager. I only interact with 2 people without question, and that's the city manager and the city attorney. Everyone else I have to ask permission to interact with, and I need to have complete trust in those 2 positions that we're responsible for hiring that interact with all of our department chairs or department leads and everyone else in the city. I enumerated specific examples of my concerns in my written evaluation of Mr. Jennings that illustrated these areas. The examples I included were related to land swap discussions, PSTA site location, the Blue Sky development withdrawal, and others. And that's public record as well. My feedback to Mr. Jennings was ongoing and consistent in these areas for many months. This included public meetings here on the dais, but also privately. Unfortunately, the feedback was not acknowledged or improved upon throughout the year, and most importantly, even after his evaluation. So I share similar experience with that. Throughout the year and in writing his evaluation, I would weigh these issues against the positives I saw happening. I commented on the positives in his evaluation as well, considering if the positives outweighed my concerns, and if his contract was not renewed, how would that impact city priorities that are important to me and to others, in particular to city staff and residents? I also weighed that I am one member on the council with one vote and my own perspective. We don't routinely sit up here and talk about how is our city manager doing. And I would offer that as we move forward in whatever way we do, that we look at a possible 1 year, when we have the first year of a contract with a city manager, we have perhaps quarterly discussions of how are things going, what are we noticing? You know, and maybe the second year we do it twice a year, and the third year, then we're kind of going fine with an annual. But I think, you know, and to reflect on the process, hopefully during the work session on Monday, that might help. But for me, the breaking point for me was the mishandling of the Ruth Eckerd Hall multi-year, multi-million-dollar agreement. It followed the same pattern of behavior, but really it was even worse. Information was incomplete, communicated extremely late in the process, and only provided when I requested the information in writing, and again, in my meeting with him, there was deflection of responsibility onto others. This resulted in an incomplete final contract, and as I said in the work session that week, this process was totally unacceptable. So my conclusion at our last council meeting was that we should not renew Mr. Jennings' contract. I realize this leaves many with questions and concerns about how we will move forward. But as I mentioned earlier, I feel that having trust and competence in our city manager is paramount. For me, trust is the foundation of any healthy, productive, and respectful relationship. And I can't operate in this job without complete trust in a city manager. I am so proud of our city and the work we do. We have amazing employees, talented, dedicated, and committed to our community. We also have strong department leaders who will lead us through this transition and who will keep the positive momentum that so many people articulated going. I have had over 40 individual conversations with residents, community leaders, and business owners since that December meeting. I know people value the progress we've made. For example, people have mentioned sidewalks and the city's commitment to catch up on a backlog of repairs and maintenance. That will continue. Most importantly, I am committed to preventing a backlog by properly budgeting for ongoing construction, maintenance, and repair. A second example falls under the Office of Innovation, which oversees our environment and sustainability efforts, as well as the Neighborhoods Division, that residents clearly really care about. Those efforts, including some very recent hires in that Neighborhoods Division, are very visible to our residents, and I will continue to champion these efforts and proper staffing. Finally, the city has a talented new CRA director for our current and soon-to-be-approved second CRA. And I have great confidence in her leadership to not skip a beat and that it's full steam ahead for accomplishing goals for 2023 and beyond. A change in leadership is not the end of the world. Mr. Jennings is talented and has many good qualities. He just isn't the right fit here in Clearwater. I wish him well and know that he will find success in future endeavors. I want to close by thanking all of our city staff for the work you do. I am so proud to live in Clearwater, to be part of this team, and to be representing our residents, doing my best to do what is best for our beautiful city. I want to offer a special thank you to Assistant City Manager and Acting City Manager, Jennifer Poirier, for stepping in to fill in for Mr. Jennings. Thank you to our second Assistant City Manager, Michael Delk, to Micah Maxwell, our Chief Innovation Officer, to our City Attorney, David Margolis, and all of our department directors, Chief Slaughter and Chief Ellers, for keeping us on track. I'm excited to move forward, to continue the positive momentum, and celebrate the continued progress and achievements in our beautiful city.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Councilmember Teixeira.
So, going after you two, you pretty much mentioned everything I was going to mention. So I'm just going to expand on it and personalize it a little bit. Like every other major decision, I received many communications with different opinions. There were some that actually asked me, why wasn't it done sooner after the PSTA incident, or at the very least after the Blue Skies? There's those who are very much a supporter of Mr. Jennings and oppose the termination of his termination. And then there are those that were neutral and said, I respect that this was an executive decision, and I respect that you know what you're doing. But in those various communications, there was a lot of questions. And they were repeated questions, so there was like a pattern. And I realized when I reviewed the tape that I was struggling with this balance. How much can I say and be transparent? And when does it become a character assassination? And I struggled with that. But I understand that what I said was not clear enough for the citizens, or for at least some of the citizens. But I do want to address a couple of things. It was very difficult for me to do this. I've had 2 businesses and I've never fired someone. I've either redirected them or they've resigned. So to have my first firing in public was agonizing for me. It was not all of a sudden. Alarms were ringing early on. I found it as a very isolating experience because I cannot communicate with my colleagues. And at first I thought, well, maybe it's because I'm the newest one on the council. Maybe that's why I'm not feeling this confidence and this trust. I mentioned before, I do like this man, and I have joked with him and I enjoy our banter. It's not that, and it's not his abilities either. In communicating with these various people who've reached out to me, I found that an analogy that I used really resonated well. And so instead of going through all the examples that all of you have mentioned before or will add to, I'm just going to use this analogy. Imagine, if you will, you and your family would like to buy a home. It's a fixer-upper. And you hire a contractor, a very capable contractor, and he's doing a great job, excellent craftsmanship. But you walk in and you realize that the sleek white cabinets that you ordered are now green Quaker. And the contractor doesn't seem very concerned. A couple days later, you realize that the stainless steel double sink that you ordered is now a porcelain farmer or farmhouse sink. Again, he doesn't seem concerned. To make matters worse, he reaches into his bag, removes a tile and says, next are the floors. This is the tile you're going to choose. I need you to sign off on it. We bought it. It's going to be installed tomorrow. My question is, would you continue to have him work on the rest of the house? And that's all I'm going to say.
Councilmember Bunker.
I was aware that there were issues that needed to be addressed. I mean, I called out Mr. Jennings for the Blue Sky affordable housing project. I was incredibly upset about the fact that Scientology got in there and said, we want this property, and John tried to help them do that. I blew up at him in our private meeting about that. But I didn't want to make any of my decisions strictly on Scientology, because I believe that John has done a lot of really terrific stuff. One of the things that pains me most about this is I've talked to a lot of city employees who have said, man, the atmosphere is so much better now. There were so many issues that were HR issues that were not addressed over the years. And now it's a so much nicer place to work. And I think that's important. We had, before we were doing our diversity study, there was a council member who said, the only thing our employees care about is a paycheck. And I knew that wasn't right. But I didn't realize how bad things had gotten in some departments. So I was happy to see John make changes like that. I really appreciated his work with the neighborhoods and what was going to be happening there. John was, talking constantly with David Miscavige, the head of Scientology. Fine. I would talk to Miscavige myself if I could. I tried to make John aware, of how Miscavige operates, and you can't really trust that he's going to come through with what he's promising. But I didn't want to make that the reason for me to say, he's out. I wanted to give him an opportunity to find out what is possible. I was just absolutely surprised that none of these issues, the details of everything. But none of these things were brought up at the review, the annual review. It seems to me that this would have been an appropriate time to say, listen, there's some issues here that we need to address, and I think you're on the bubble. Unless we see definite changes, we may have to look elsewhere. Instead, we had a review that said, oh, you did a good job. Oh, yeah, well, there were some things we argued about, but yeah, terrific. It was a perfectly acceptable year from the mayor. And then suddenly, boom, it was over. So I think that was a little startling. I've expressed my support for John. I hope wherever he winds up that he does a fine job. When we hired him, I said that there could be bumpy roads ahead with this fella, but if you want, I will make it unanimous and we'll bring him in. And I tried to give him every opportunity. I was aware that there were serious issues that were not being met in a timely manner. I wish we had done more to say, this is serious. Unless we get this contract in a month ahead of time, or whatever our schedule would be, out the door. I understand the complaints, though. I do.
Councilmember Albrecht.
Well, as you're hearing, we have a very diverse council up here. Each one of us has different needs and thinks differently. I think we were all kind of on the same page when we hired John. We wanted to have somebody that came in that would be a game changer, somebody that could look through a different lens and perhaps move things along. To John, I think Clearwater looked like a beautiful, perfect place to land. I mean, we have a great pension system. I mean, we have money in the bank. I mean, and it's a beautiful place. It's got #1 beach in America. So he was, I'm sure, a little shocked when he got here and started looking into things that, well, it's not so pretty as it seems. He really had to delve into a lot of the departments and straighten things up, which he did. And I think he got a lot of respect from employees for doing that, because he visited each department and talked to employees separately, talked to the management to see how he could better each department. We had another game changer a while back named Mike Roberto, and he got fired. But, he had some great ideas that were outside the box, and perhaps he wasn't really good at communication. Maybe he got a little bit too far ahead of what the council would really put up with, I guess. But, he did some great things. While we're talking about this, I wanted to just go through some of what I consider, and we're all different up here. We all have one-on-ones with John, and we all see him in a different light, because we're never together talking about John. So it's good to hear what the mayor's gone through and what the vice mayor, and certainly each one of us has different experience. In my view, John's strength was visiting all departments and determining the strengths and weaknesses and acting on the weaknesses. He fired a lot of problematic employees, turned things around. He created a public works department. Now, many of you probably didn't know, we didn't have a public works department. We had a shared public works responsibility by Parks and Rec and engineering. And so a lot of things, a lot of finger pointing. Are you doing this? Are we doing that? You could see the sidewalk issue kind of got laid aside, and the roads need to be fixed, and the public works department, that's their job. So that's what John did. He created a public works, took that away from that department. To me, that was a real good idea, because I know we had complaints about sidewalks and streets. Also, the revamping of the customer service department to be more customer friendly. I mean, I don't know if any of you have ever called down there, but a lot of people told me that, you know, they would call and there was never a real friendly environment there. But he took over that, and I think has changed that around. The creation of Department of Innovation. Now that was specifically, I think, to help neighborhoods, because that was a big complaint. I mean, I've been here, and that's always been the number one complaint with me, that I guess we had more people that helped neighborhoods back before, you know, we had the big recession and we had to cut, but we never really went back and rehired people to do that. Well, John's made it a department for innovation that, and actually staffed it now, where we have more staffing to to do, you know, get together with neighborhoods and find out what their issues are and to help that. And I know I've got a lot of good feedback on that. One of the things that I think John was different than previous city manager was, John looked at things on a very high level, you know, using his entrepreneurial background lens. He looked for development opportunities that were not necessarily apparent. And he brought that to all of us. He said, what about this? What about that? I think maybe one of the weaknesses in that was he didn't, you know, he didn't follow through with each one of us and say, or the people he's negotiating with and say, you know, one of his final statements would be, well, we may be able to do this, but let's see what council says. and I think that was the main thing that kind of made everybody upset here, because a lot of people thought he was negotiating behind the scenes and not really bringing that forward to us for final say. You know, John had weaknesses, in my opinion. His health. Right off the bat, I could see his health was going to be an issue. And you know, 3 months he caught COVID in I think January. And you know, I had COVID, I got over it in a week. This stuck with him for 8-9 months. I mean, he was in a fog for a long time while he was doing all this stuff, but we could see he wasn't all there, and he wasn't a strong person that stayed and got things done. He did do some of these things, but I think maybe that fog that contributed to some of his issues with, you know, telling us what he was thinking. And his communication skills. You know, we all brought up the PSTA thing. Well, that was the most shock to me, because I was so excited that we got $20 million from the federal government that we've been trying to for I don't know how many times before, and John kind of threw a wet sock over that, saying, you know, oh, well, that's off the table. Well, where did that come from? You know, he never said that to me. And, you know, a few days after I read that in the paper, I confronted him on that, and we polled each one of the council members here. I did in a work session, and they said, no, you never said that to me either. So there's definitely communication problems there. So anyway, the thing that, when I went in and talked to John on a weekly basis, and I had never had this happen before, previously. Usually I'd go in and I'd have a list of things, here's some of my concerns, and you know, the city manager would write it down, and then I'd expect maybe them to look into it or give me an answer the next time, or during the week, not wait a week and then come back to me. But, you know, I'd come in the next week and say, how are we doing on this, this, and that? What was that again? Let me write it down. And that used to drive me crazy. John, on the other hand, when I'd come in, and go over each item, he would pick up the phone right there in front of me and take care of the issue, or he would start the process to take care of the issue. And I thought that part of the communication was great. I really think, my perspective, and I disagree, I understand what each council member is saying because that is their experience, and hearing it from them now, I could see why they're frustrated. And to me, I had a different experience. And I thought that John really, I didn't give him an A during the evaluation. It was a C+, because I thought he could do better. And I even called it out on my evaluation. I think next year we're going to be doing better on this, this, and this. So I was all set to say this first quarter, let's look at you, John, and I'd be talking to him about how he could overcome some of his weaknesses. So when it came up that, we were going to fire him, right before Christmas, it was a little shock to me. But I still think that his style of leadership needs to be honed in, but I think that is good for Clearwater, and I'm going to get a lot of negative comments by saying that, but that's my opinion, not anybody else's. I liked his management, I liked his thinking and his entrepreneurial style and the lens that he looked through. And so it's very difficult for me to say, yes, I'm going to fire him, when I think he could have come around first quarter of this year, so I'm going to vote not to fire him. But I can do math. I see that's not going to happen. So
just for people to know, the process by our charter is that it takes 2 meetings if there are only 3 votes on the council. That's why we have had, and it requires 14 days between the first and the second vote. If there are 4 or more council members that vote in the first meeting for separation, then it is immediate. So we've had 3 weeks, so we have met all of the criteria, and so that's an issue. I also want to point out to people that, the city manager and the city attorney are at-will employees, meaning that they can be terminated with or without cause. I know that, December 15th was a difficult date. There is a reason for that. That was also the night we were supposed to talk about compensation for Mr. Jennings. I could not justify giving somebody a raise and then a month or 2 later potentially terminating. So the timing looks terrible, perhaps, but that's one of the reasons for it. I also want to point out there is a financial lifeline of 20 weeks of severance, which is fairly significant, which also makes the timing a little less stinging. So just want to point those things out. Any other comments or questions? Do I have a motion?
I make a motion to dismiss Mr. Jennings.
Second?
All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
nay.
3-2, the motion passes. All right.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor, were members here
Excuse me.
allowed to present thoughts about this issue
You had to be here when it was open for citizen comment, Mr. Markle.
all the way at the beginning?
At the beginning of the item.
Okay, I was unaware that it changed from 6 to 5. Thank you.
So now we need to do a couple things. We need to determine an interim. We need to determine salary. And we need to talk about a search. And I think we need to start all of those things as soon as possible. I know she is very new, but I would propose, and we're very fortunate to have 3 good leaders in Mr. Delk and Ms. Poyer and Mr. Maxwell. But I would propose, and I can't make a motion, but that we continue with Ms. Boyer in the position of interim during the search process.
I make that motion.
Second.
A second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. Last time with Mr. Maxwell, as he was the interim, we gave a significant bump because of the fact that he was overseeing significant departments plus, taking over as the interim. So I would propose that we follow the same formula that we had for Mr. Maxwell.
I think that's fine. Can we get the numbers on Monday at the work
We can do
session
that.
and do all that on Monday?
Okay. And then as far as a search, I do not want to use Baker Tilly again. I just was not happy with the first
Right.
set of searches. I've talked to some folks at the county who were not pleased with Baker Tilly either. They have some suggestions, so I'd like to get staff to look into some of those other firms. I don't believe that this is going to exceed the limit where we have to do an RFP. Would you agree with that?
It's
Mr. Margolis?
unlikely. Of course, we don't know until we go out there, but highly unlikely, given what Baker Tilly charged last time.
I think would be helpful is if we looked at the job description materials that we sent out, Baker Tilly sent out last time in that binder on Monday's work session, and look at our description and expectations for the city manager and fine tune that language based on our experiences. I think we need to be very focused in expectations, and however our job description and expectations are for applicants, I'd like to take another look at it collectively and see if there's something we want to add or change or refine.
Well, I'm figuring when we actually select a company, that would be the time to have that discussion with them.
I guess, but I mean, we only have one meeting.
Advertising.
Yeah, but maybe just a first discussion of it, just to start thinking about what we're looking for. I mean, it's just an idea for Monday's work session, because we only have one meeting in January, and I don't want to, I think we need to get right on it.
Well, it's going to take a couple weeks just to find the search firm and to talk to them and get pricing and everything else. I'm happy to talk about it on Monday if everybody wants to prepare for that. I'll also bring some other things that I have that I think would be beneficial to all of you.
Mm-hmm. And then that'd be great.
Okay? Other issues council would like to bring up at this time? I'm going to pass on closing comments tonight, okay?
Yeah, I don't have any.
All right. Nothing else for the order. We are adjourned.